RotoGrinders! Welcome to RotoGrinders Today. I'm Jordan Cooper, a.k.a. BlenderHD, BlenderHD if you want to follow me on Twitter. It's Tuesday, September 5th, and we got tons of MLB action today. We'll be talking about that for DFS, for props, for Pick'em, and who better to talk about MLB than the guy behind the $1 Million Musings here at RotoGrinders. It's Dave Potts. Cheese is good. It's September, Dave. Are you sick of MLB and you're ready for football, or is this the time of year where you're opining the fact that MLB is almost over and you're dreading football?
No, I'm ready for a break. Usually when we get to this time, like it's a lot of if you add up whatever 4,000 words a day times 5 days a week times however long it's been, it's a lot. And as I mentioned before, well, like fantasy baseball is my thing. In actual real life, I'm a football fan first, so I am absolutely ready for football season.
But do you prefer MLB DFS?
Correct. For
NFL?
DFS, I prefer baseball, yes. But as far as real life watching a sport, give me the football.
Well, to help Cheese along, seeing that you're writing 4,000 words a day for so long, hit that thumbs up button. Hit the thumbs in the morning. You know how much I like those. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the notification bell to know when we go live. Obviously here, you wake up early in the morning, right? Just like me to do this show, to write the $1 Million Musings. In September, Dave, the call-up rule now is not that MLB teams don't have like 40 players. Like it used to be that September 1st came around and it's like create a players galore, like all over DFS. It's like, oh, anyone can play at any time. Now it's only one pitcher and one position player. Does that change any of your approach to playing DFS? Is the team playoff bound or not playoff bound? Are they out of the playoffs? Is there anything that you specifically change in your thinking of lineup construction or what types of players, pitchers especially, that you play? Because September is kind of we're winding down.
Yeah, the short answer is no, because of what you said. It used to be they expanded to a 40-man roster, active roster. Now it's like it's two players different. Theoretically, you can overanalyze the pinch hit risk of those few teams. Like you put one extra guy on the bench, sure, the Jock Peterson is that much slightly more likely to get pinch hit for. And, the teams that are out of the running, there's a little more chance that they start pulling guys in the blowout, but it's so like hard to pick out those things that essentially, no, I'm just going to assume whoever's playing that day, that's who's playing that day.
Do you think pitch counts change?
So
Or is there an issue with certain pitchers?
Yes, it's different for pitchers for sure.
Okay, so it's when we have pitch counts here at RotoGrinders, like a lot of our projections for pitchers are, built around like kind of this like mean or median pitch count. The bat may have a slightly different pitch count that they're going by than the plate IQ projections. But, from what I've seen at least, would it be true? I mean, this is just a hypothesis that teams that are dreadfully out of the playoffs, right? The A's, the Rockies, that they're much more likely to just as long as they're not like an ace pitcher, but of course, if they had ace pitchers, they wouldn't be in the situation they're in. They're more likely to. Ken Waldichuk is more likely to pitch 100 pitches, even if he's giving up 11 runs, because why the hell not? It's not like they need to win the game. Are there also considerations on stud pitchers that they're saving for the playoffs? So maybe they only pitch 85 or 90 when it's possible. They're up by 4 runs. It's like instead of giving an extra inning, let's save his arm. Are there any dynamics like that in September?
Yeah, actually, what you said is kind of the most interesting part of it. It's almost the exact opposite of the rest of the year, where the aces are always the guys with the pitch count ceiling. But yeah, it actually does kind of flip. Really not quite yet, but really I would say the last 2 weeks of the season. If a team is definitely in the playoffs and they have a 6-run lead and their ace has gone 87 pitches through 6 innings, he's coming out. Whereas in May, he goes another inning for sure. So that does kind of downgrade the expensive aces. And you can say the same thing really for aces on teams that are out of it. Anyone who's under team control in the future Like, they don't want to burn out their guy for absolutely no reason. So I do end up having a little more interest in cheaper pitchers when everyone's ceiling is essentially lowered.
And
Yeah,
you
it's
even have a section. You have a
opposite.
section in $1 Million Musings for that called cheap nonsense.
Exactly. And yeah, the cheap nonsense becomes more relevant the later we get in the year. There it is, cheap nonsense. But like, so what you
Except
just
Patrick
mentioned,
Corbin is a perfect example of
yeah,
cheap nonsense.
really tonight is a good example. There's two. There's the Patrick Corbin, and you already mentioned Ken Waldachuk. Like, these two guys, exactly to what you said, are going to pitch. Are going to most likely they have a higher pitch count than if Mike Soroka actually starts for the Braves. Like, they're not going to push him. Even a guy like, you know, Dylan Cease, or really even Framber Valdez. I mean, they don't really have a higher pitch count ceiling than Patrick Corbin tonight. They're Patrick Corbin's still him, but as far as what you said at the beginning, yeah, Corbin and Waldachuk, if they're pitching even sort of fine, there's no real reason not to just let them keep pitching.
Yeah, but
And
it's
that
also
stuff is not
possible
really
that
priced in.
you get 116 pitches and he still gives up 8 runs.
It is, but it's not any more likely than him giving up 8 runs on 12 pitches. It's kind of like all it does is raise the ceiling. Like the negative point floor for these cheap nonsense guys is there regardless of innings or pitch count.
How about on today's slate specifically? We'll talk about it. How about guys like Garrett Cole? I mean, I could bring up the projections here. I'm bringing up the bat projections. He's the highest projected raw points pitcher on the slate. Do you consider the Yankees to be a playoff possible team? I mean, do any of these dynamics put into play? Because we have expensive. I mean, Garrett Cole's 12K today on DraftKings, but then we have guys like Brandon Fat, which I'm assuming that's how you pronounce his name. How do you pronounce? Is it Fate?
Fat.
It's
I'm pretty sure it's actually Fought, but we call him P-Fat for sure.
But I mean, what's the difference between here? Like we have Garrett Cole as the highest projected owned pitcher today, and you have to spend to get him. I'm not sure if you're gonna need the salary. Depends on the teams that you're stacking. But it feels like to me this is the type of slate looking at projections that maybe you don't have to spend that dramatically at pitcher. Maybe, Garrett Cole. I know he's facing the Tigers, which is like, a bunch of free strikeouts. But is it worth is Garrett Cole worth 4,000 more than like these other guys in like the 7K, 8K range, the mid tier?
The short answer there is sort of. Really, I think the salary cap is actually really pretty great on this slate. Like, they made it where you can't really play Cole with a Brave stack or something like that, which is good, because if you could, that's just what everyone would do. Yeah, I think like points per dollar wise, you definitely don't need Cole. He's not really a DFS ace as much as he's a real life ace at this point. To me, this is one of those, I think you kind of build the rest of your lineup first. And if you can afford him, just absolutely do it. I wouldn't worry about ownership at all with Cole, but I would absolutely worry about salary. And there are not a lot of ways to get a good enough offense with a 12K pitcher today. So more of my lineups are not going to have Cole.
So there's no vomit stack of the day like I like?
Well, there's always those. But there's a lot of good stacks. Like, the chances of, like, the slates where I really like what you consider to be the vomit stacks are the ones where I don't see a bunch of teams scoring 10 runs. Like, it's more that I want the vomit stack that they can score 7 runs and at their salary that can win a slate. I think it's a little less likely when you have a slate where there's a bunch of offense with super extreme upside like we have tonight.
Also, the combination is that really you're playing vomit stacks because there's like 2 expensive pitchers that have slate breaking ceilings that the only way to fit them in is to play a team like the Tigers or the Pirates, the Royals or the A's and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
And we really don't have that tonight. Like Valdez doesn't really have that ceiling. And then, Chris Bassett is kind of the other obvious guy, but you don't want to sacrifice everything to get Chris Bassett and Garrett Cole. When, like you've already mentioned,
so
you
who are
could
the
just play
targets?
PFAT instead.
So do you consider PFAT? Do you consider him to be the main target? Because I mean, I think maybe depending on how you look at like short term versus long term, like I'm looking at the bat projections, which typically take much larger sample sizes into account, and it may be directly in conflict with your $1 million musings. But it seems to
Correct.
me that like you're much more likely to play a lot more fat than someone like Reed Detmers, who you even say in your article, like, yeah, if he does have a 26% strikeout rate, long term, like he's too cheap, but he's not looked good recently.
Yeah, this is one of those, like, sometimes I rail against projections. It's not really that. It's just like, it's not the projection's job to pick out short-term things. Like, it's kind of their job to do the long-term stuff. Well, short-term, Detmer's velocity's down, strikeouts are down, walks are up. He looks truly horrendous. So if you just want to believe the projections, then you're going to play Detmers. Personally, I don't want to play a guy who is pitching horribly with decreased velocity, especially if he's going to be even moderately popular. So I'm out on Detmers.
Do you think Detmers, because of long-term projections, are actually going to come in higher on than you think, or do you think it's going to be which side strategically? Because we have to think about this, especially for NFL, because you get very small sample size in NFL. There's recency bias. People look and go, I don't care what the projections say. Reed Detmers looks horrible. I'm not going to play him. Or people just don't even care about short-term trends and like, well, Reed Detmers should be more expensive based on his long-term performance. Like if you're using the bad projections and you don't know anything about short-term anything, I mean, I just ran 150 lineups.
Yeah, you're playing Detmers.
Right, I got 97% Reed Detmers.
Yeah, and this is why I love MLB DFS. Is most people, I don't know about most, at least a small majority. I think more people just use projections. There are plenty of people
majority.
on both sides.
That seems counter.
By what I mean to say is slightly more than 50%.
Okay.
Small majority is a weird way to phrase anything. I think more people just use projections. People who are hand building and looking at things the way I do are not going to be playing Detmers. That's where you'll get the Brandon PFAT ownership.
To be fair, Fat actually projects.
Yeah,
decently in the bat really, also.
A lot of projection builds will give you the two of them, Detmers with Fott, which would be fine if I like Detmers. My assumption is Fott will come in ahead of Detmers, but it will be very close in ownership. And again, I'm personally out on Detmers. I think the very obvious build is Cole if you can get him, or Bassett if you can't, with Fott. And it is conceivable, like I wrote about in the musings, like maybe tonight's the night Detmer's velocity comes back. Like even late in the year, guys go through swings with this stuff. Like you don't know. You say the same thing for Brady Singer.
Dave, I remember early in the season, everyone was telling me that Blake Snell was just done, that he should be out of the majors. And then he came back and he did great for a while.
Yeah, like things come and go, obviously. Most likely, when it's something like velocity, that's different than the Blake Snell thing. It's like he can't find the strike zone. And so if he gives up one hit at the wrong time, he gives up 6 runs. If he doesn't give up the one hit at the wrong time, then he doesn't give up any runs to get to strikeouts. But with someone like Detmers, and I'll throw Brady Singer in the same mix, like there's an actual real reason why they're struggling. Their velocity is down. They're different pitchers than they were a month ago. And there's no rule that says they can't just come back tonight and it's back. But I need to see it personally. So when I see bad pitching combined with an actual reason for it, like a velocity drop, that's where I'm out on someone.
The only other pitcher that is coming up on my run of bat projections, just using just 5-man stack, very default type of settings, is another pitcher from your article, Dean Kramer. That, I mean, you put him as a low strikeout pitcher, but I mean he's had spikes before. This Angels lineup, especially with Ohtani gone, like almost everyone in their lineup strikes out like a quarter of the time or more. I mean, is Kramer an option? I mean, what is his upside? I mean, 8,600 seems a little pricey for him, but if you're not spending 12K on Cole, do you view Kramer as maybe below Fat and maybe even below Bassett, who's 9,700? Do you think Kramer has enough ceiling for DFS purposes, at least?
Sort of, because kind of nobody other than Cole really has ceiling. It's one of these slates where the kind of boring quality starts that Kramer's been getting, which I think is very much in play here again, like, 6 innings and 4 or 5 strikeouts. That's what I kind of pinpointed in the article. Like, maybe he gets an extra strikeout or 2 from the matchup, but that's really still not his game, regardless of matchup. But yeah, I think he can get a quality start, which is a little overpriced. But like you said, if you're not playing Cole, you have to find 2 pitchers. And there's really only 2, basically Bassett and Fott are the only other 2 that I even kind of like. And it's not like I want to be all in on those guys. So yes, Kramer is in the mix. Just for, even though I think it's air quotes overpriced for his realistic upside, he's totally fine. If he gets you that 20-point DK start, which is quite possible, like, you'll gladly take that on this slate.
Any concern with Bassett? I remember his last start, he pitched like almost 7 innings and only had 1 strikeout. The only reason I know that is because I had his over 4.5 K prop and was wondering, like, it seems like he's pitching well, but just not striking anyone out. Is that just happened to be just an outlier occurrence?
I mean, no, he's more in the Kramer vein. Like, he's really not a strikeout guy. He's much more a good real life play for the quality start. And it's a similar thing. Like, it's the matchup probably gives him an extra strikeout or 2. But you're really kind of overpaying for innings upside and hopefully run prevention. I don't think it's crazy to play Kramer instead of Bassett and use that, whatever it is, $1,100 somewhere else. But I do think Bassett is the better pitcher. But again, I think I just like Fott better than both of them for the salary. I would rather just go cheaper and spend that money on bats.
I mean, a lot of times with Fott, it's the Colorado Rockies outside of Colorado, and their lineup is dreadful.
Like, really, all 3 of these guys we're talking about just have really good matchups, and that's really what puts them all in play. But when you look at the strikeouts, if we get what the projected lineups are, the Rockies are the highest strikeout lineup of any of them. It's a really, truly bad team. Like, 8 of the 9 hitters are over 23% strikeouts, and like 7 of them are over like 28%. That's ridiculous. So yeah, my lean is just save the money. Like, we're basically paying for good matchup.
But it seems like this season, I mean, if you played any pitcher against the Rockies or the A's or something, like, you typically did well.
Yeah, you're doing fine. And again, if it's not Cole, if Cole doesn't have the breakout game, it's kind of likely that nobody really has any sort of ceiling. I don't think we see a 30-point DK game out of anyone. So that's why I'm just perfectly happy with an okay quality start that doesn't have a bunch of strikeouts.
How about stack wise on DraftKings? I ran bat projections, and I'm getting a lot of the Mets. I'm getting the Giants, the Yankees, the Royals, the Cubs, the Diamondbacks. Am I in the ballpark of what you've been looking at?
Yeah, I think the most interesting thing about this slate is that if salary were no thing, the Braves would be mega chalk. But it's such a thing, and they're so priced up that you almost have to play like Waldichuk and Corbin to even get a Brave stack. So I don't think the Braves are going to be popular, even though they're kind of like obviously the best offense. So I do want to go out of my way to make sure I'm playing Braves, even though it's going to mean just hoping that I get a cheap pitcher who doesn't go negative. But otherwise, everything you said there, I think is correct. Like the wind in Wrigley is going to make the Cubs and the Giants popular, and I do like both of them. I definitely like Alonso and Lindor more than a full Met stack, but I'm fine with a Met stack. Arizona, quite good. And then it's kind of a bunch of everybody.
A bunch of everybody. What a take.
Yeah. Well, it's the correct take in present day MLB. Like,
right.
Well, really
one of the things in MLB DFS, from a tools perspective, because we always feature here on the new show, RotoGrinders Today, a tools concept that we have here at RotoGrinders. So you could sign up for RotoGrinders Premium, you get Lineup HQ, you get all of our content, get Dave's $1 Million Musings in MLB. Just click on that link in the description, get $10 off your first month. And being that you're the first guest on the first show, I think the most highlighted tool or option that we have that I think me and you both were the ones that are responsible for them implementing is that OIS button or checkbox in Lineup HQ. Dave, do you want to take a second to tell the audience what exactly does OIS stand for? Why do we use it? And why? How do you use it? And why would one choose to only play certain batters and stacks?
Yeah, I think it's like you said. I think this is the best thing that's been. I mean, it's been 3 or 4 years since it's been on Lineup HQ. I think it's the best thing there for MMEing with stacks. Essentially, if you check the OIS box only in stacks, whatever player you click is only going to be used in stacks where you've got other teammates. You're never going to get that guy on his own as the only player on his team. So essentially, that's what I do when I'm hand building. I get to that just organically. Like I know I don't want to use this guy unless it's in a stack, so I don't put him in. But when you're building a bunch of lineups with an optimizer, you'll get a whole bunch of like low power, low speed guys that project well because of team context, but that you don't really want unless their team is doing well. So the shortest way to say it is anyone who doesn't have power or speed, I don't want outside of a stack.
And for contextual purposes, that optimizers, lineup builders are primarily just knapsack problem solvers. They're trying to get like this mean number in the FPTS column, the highest as possible, but that doesn't take into consideration any type of correlation, any type of ceiling, any type of ownership. So like based on the point per dollar value, like if you run a lot of lineups, you may get 2K Tim LeCastro as a one-off in a lot of lineups because he's just so cheap for a 7.15 mean projection. You may get, Mark Vientos at third base, or you may get Ryan McKenna. I mean, there's a lot of these cheapy guys where in order to fit in Acuna, raw points in your lineup, you need one of these guys. So is this the primary use of, like, you just go to Tim LeCastro and go, yeah, unless he's in a Met stack, I'm just going to click this button?
Yeah.
The
short way to do it, if you don't know anything about baseball, like you don't know these player names, you don't know people's skill set, like they're all just names on a page to you, the simplest way to do it is just take all of the lowest projected guys and just say in stack only, just to be safe. The way I do it, I do it position by position. And essentially, you can find a cutoff line of players that are just better than everyone else at the position that you would be happy to have on their own. And everyone below that, just OIS. I don't think you can really use that button enough. Like,
so for instance, at third base, Dave, so we have like from a raw point projection, you have like Austin Riley, Christopher Morel, Manny Machado, Alex Bregman, Ryan McMahon, JD Davis, Nolan Gorman. You take a look at the top and go, well, if I have an Austin Riley $5,800 one-off, like he could hit 2 home runs and
Right.
that's fine. But like you don't want to go all the way to the bottom to like Emmanuel Rivera's $2,800 against Freeland. Like, no. Like
Exactly.
don't have him be the one-off.
Right. And it is useful if you have a few cheaper guys who you're willing to put in as a one-off, like the JD Davis thing today. He's sitting there for you. Anyone in this Wrigley win game gives you a few things that we don't always get with guys who have home run upside at a cheap price. Ideally, I'd like to have, it's usually all the expensive guys are obvious. Like any day you'll have Austin Riley or Manny Machado or Alex Bregman, sure. But if you can get like a JD Davis, I actually have Mark Vientos playable as a one-off today because he's a guy with some power against Corbin and he's super cheap. Everyone below him is going to get the checkbox today. And even above Vientos, the more expensive guys like, Michael Garcia, Davis Schneider, Gunnar Henderson, Nolan Arenado, those guys are getting the OIS today. There's not a correct answer for it, but to me, the fewer players that I want as one-offs, the better. Like I want to just know who I'm getting outside of my stacks.
Another way of using the OIS button strategically is maybe something that I do more of than you do, Cheese, is that very highly owned batters that are more likely to be in highly owned stacks. So like a lot of times I do not play Ronald Acuna. Let's say it's a 6-game slate or something. It's not that big. And Ronald Acuna is like 38% owned. And the Braves are like the second highest owned stack. That I may just click the OIS button on Acuna and say, well, if Acuna does well, it's more likely that all the Braves did well. And if the Braves are going to be owned anyway, like I don't want 38% owned Acuna as my one-off and stack some other team. So I don't have to click the OIS button on many players. Like on today's slate, as of right now, our ownership doesn't have like anyone that fits that description. But when it gets to that point of like, oh, everyone's playing this game, everyone's playing Coors, and the White Sox are in Coors, and Eloy is 3,500 still, and he's going to be 40% owned. It's like, no, I'll play him in a White Sox stack, but not on his own. Do you do any of that, or that since I play in a much more ownership based strategy that you care more about? My one-offs need to have power and could get there on their own, and you don't care what the rest of the stack does.
Right. What I'll say is I'm much pickier. If someone is high owned, I'm much pickier about whether I'm going to use them or not. But if they're the best play, they're the best play, and I don't mind that they're high owned because the things around them. Assuming I'm not playing just chalk everything else, I don't mind having chalky one-off or two. Yeah, I don't have any disagreement with the way you do it either. But I think you're definitely right. We just kind of view the ownership a little bit differently as far as one-offs.
Right. I don't. It's not like I use it that often. It's like a very specific cases, especially on smaller slates where getting different means a lot more.
Yeah.
Because
but like you said,
people are going to be chalky.
Today, sometimes we just have slates where there really is no chalk. I think that's the case today. Like we've got those 5 or 6 teams that are all relatively obvious, and it's going to get spread out. That I don't think there's anyone you have to fade because of ownership at this point.
Okay, so for today's MLB slate, either DraftKings or FanDuel, I play primarily on DraftKings. Is there a specific fantasy angle of the day, something that you will be doing abundantly in your lineups, a team that you'll be playing more of, a pitcher you'll be playing more or less of? Is that fat, or is that a stack that you're playing? I mean, what is Cheese's fantasy angle of the day?
Well, I give you 2 things that we talked about. It's definitely on the pitcher side. It is PFAT. Like that's who I'm playing. On the hitter side, it's going to be actually, we discussed this Reed Detmers thing. I think there's a chance he's just broken and or finished. So the Orioles stack is my play of the day. Taking the fact that Detmers has been awful and the velocity's down, if that continues, um, I want all the Orioles I can get, and I do think they're pretty well off the radar. And then with the kind of popular things, again, it's all bunched together. So my lean is actually to play a bunch of power one-offs from those popular teams and not worry about the ownership because I think it's spread out. So I want to play a stack like the Orioles, sneakier, and then I'll just use if Pete Alonso or Acuna or Seiya Suzuki or Jock Peterson or Aaron Judge, and not worry about the ownership at all.
Well, especially at that point, if you're leveraging against you believe Detmers is going to get higher ownership than he should be getting.
Yeah, and even at 0% ownership, I just think he's bad right now, and people aren't going to play the Orioles.
Does it dissuade you with Detmers being that his prop lines across the industry are like over 5.5 is like minus 140, minus 145?
Well, so no, this is something I say a lot, and it always sounds like I must be joking, but I'm not. Like, I don't plan to win today anyway. Like, if we get the good Detmers, great. Like, I'm probably not going to win today anyway. Like, I'm playing for, let's say he is actually broken and the velocity keeps dropping, then I'm going to win. If he comes back, if he bounces back, I won't be stunned at all. I just won't. My Earl stacks will just lose, and oh well, I'll play tomorrow.
Right, but your opinion based on your experience is that you believe that the market is overvaluing his long-term performance, and that because of the velocity drop, that compared to the market, that you'd be under Detmers and say maybe he's a little bit more likely to be broken than to be normal.
That is exactly correct.
Okay.
And like, again, I always want to say, I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know Reed Detmers personally. He might be totally fine, and maybe it comes back. But I see a reason to actively play against him and not use him. And given that most people just use projections and aren't going to see that, that's all the better.
So I think that's something to monitor throughout the day if you're building your MLB lineups. I think the Reed Detmers ownership, the higher that Detmers is owned, I mean, geez, you penned what I refer to a lot of times, no matter the sport, as the Robbie Ray rule, right? The types of pitchers that they could go out and strike out 10, they could also go out and walk 6 and give up 10 runs in one inning. I think Detmers fits that mold in its current context today. That if I told you Detmers was 2% owned, I'm using an extreme.
Yeah.
And maybe you play some Detmers, but if I told you Detmers was 47% owned, you're like, I don't want to take on that much variance. You'd rather succeed when he fails than in the middle. You have to judge it. So I think if you see towards the end of the day that maybe Detmers' ownership is actually going down, that makes you a little bit more enticing to play Detmers. But your attitude is because of projections and long-term performance that people are just going to see his projection at that price and he ends up being 20-25% owned, and you'd rather not have much of that.
Correct. Yeah. Like the way you're saying it is right. Like, I don't know what Reed Detmers is going to do tonight. I truly don't. I know what looks to me like the chance that there's something wrong with him is not being priced in by the market.
Well, talking about the markets, here on RotoGrinders, if you're playing on Prize Picks, on Underdog, the Pick'em sites, we do have a fantasy Pick'em tool, which gets updated multiple times a day for all the sports: NFL, college football, NHL, NBA, MLB. It's directly tied to our RotoGrinders projections, and you could sort by what's available at Prize Picks, what's available at Underdog, and it'll compare to our statistical projections and tell you, based on our projections, what the win percentages of each projection on Prize Picks and Underdog is. So you can get that with the combo premium package. And then we also have this props and pick'em package just alone, standalone, that you don't even have to. Hey, maybe you're not playing on DraftKings or FanDuel. Maybe you're doing more props. Well, you get all of our analysts' summaries and wagers and everything here, the props and pick'em package. And I want to highlight one from Keith Eister, right? I put as my prop angle of the day because also the bat projections do agree. He has put down earlier in the morning, Dean Kramer over 4.5 strikeouts at minus 148. That line is actually the number has moved on most books, but on BetMGM, Kramer's over 5.5 Ks pays 120, so it's plus 120. So you're getting plus money, which is about the same as over 4.5 minus 148. So, hey, Kramer, I mean, against this Angels lineup, I mean, a number worse than plus 100, I wouldn't do it then. But if we go along with Keith, I do have on Prize Picks and Underdog, I do have Kramer's over 5. But obviously on the normal prop markets, you can't, you don't have the even numbers. But I think plus 120 over 5.5. And I think Dave, now, although I think his normal range of outcomes in this spot, you said even in the musings, is like 4 to 6 strikeouts.
Yeah, like I would, if you just asked me to guess at the number, I would say he probably gets 5. But getting a plus number on 5.5, I think is reasonable. If we assume the projected lineup, assume he gets his 6 innings, I mean, yeah, he can get 6 strikeouts. That's one. I think it's about right.
Okay. Geez. Where can people find you online? And once MLB is over, I mean, do you just go into hibernation? Like no picks, no nothing, no articles. You're done. 4,000. If I did the calculator, 4,000 words a day for what, 6 months? That's like 180 days, right? That means you
only 5 days a week.
5 days a week. Okay, so 5 days a week times what? How many weeks?
25 or 26.
25, so 125. So that means you've written like 500,000 words.
Something like that. And a lot of them are jabroni. So if you take out the word jabroni, I've written, 200,000 words. But yeah, it's a lot.
But during NFL season, people you just go into hibernation?
Yeah, so I don't do any content for sports other than baseball. Theoretically, someday I might decide to do some hockey content. That's actually a sport I actually know something worthwhile about. But the world doesn't really need all that much hockey content. So yeah, basically I play DFS in the off season, but you really won't see me much again until next April. If things go according to plan.
Even me? I won't even be able to see you even outside.
I mean, you come over anytime you want. Like if you want to come have some barbecue, like that would be great. I will definitely take you around on a barbecue tour of Auburn. But yeah, the content wise, I don't really have much to add for all these other sports.
Well, you can always follow Dave Cheese is Good on Twitter. Hit that thumbs up button, thummy thumbs on your way out the door. Hit that subscribe button if you're new here. Hit the notification bell to know when we go live. We got Grinders live later today, 5 p.m. Eastern. Cheese, are you going to be on crunch time tonight?
No.
Okay, but someone equally as smart as you will be on crunch time.
I believe, I don't know who's on, but there will be two people plus a Roth tonight for sure.
Plus a Roth.
I can't say which one for sure, but a Roth will be there.
So tune in then. Sign up for RotoGrinders Premium. Get Dave's $1 million musings every weekday in MLB. And you can sign up for everything here. Combo Premium. We got college football going on. College basketball will be coming back. NBA will be coming back. Why not get everything all in one package? RotoGrinders.com/premium. Click on the link in the description. Get $10 off your first month. And I'll see you tomorrow where we break down the day in DFS. Props and pick'em every Monday through Friday, 11 o'clock Eastern on RotoGrinders Today.